everyone, and welcome to Uncivil Law, where we learn through the misfortunes of others. As always, I hope you enjoy this legal education content, and today will be the day I earn that subscription. For today's story, we're dealing with the Democrats supporting extreme candidates. So the idea, at least, is the Democrats are going to fund and put money behind extreme right-wing candidates in the hopes that those extreme right-wing candidates will get nominated to be the Republican standard bearer. Then the Democrats will be able to say, look, extreme right-wing candidate, and then they will be able to beat them. Of course, there's a possibility that they won't be able to beat them, and then they'll have just funded their own opposition, which makes the whole thing kind of hilarious. Well, James Carville, the Raging Cajun, has some thoughts about it. He sees absolutely no problem with the Democrats supporting the extremist right-wing candidates. Okay, let's review this. Democratic strategist James Carville has pushed back against CNN over concerns about the Democrats' interference in Republican parties primaries. When CNN is writing articles and complaining about Democratic interference in Republican matters, you know things have gone really for a loop. Acosta questioned the ongoing strategy of Democrat boosting extremist Republicans during the primaries to ensure that they will win the midterms. So the idea is that if we put up the extremists, the Democrats will win the midterms because people won't want to vote the extremists. But what if they vote for the extremists? All right, so, quote, this has been something that's been talked about a bit in Democratic circles to whether or not this is a good idea. We've seen efforts by Democratic campaigns and outside groups to tilt the playing field in their favor by propping up extremist Republican candidates in some of these very critical races on the idea it would make it easier for the Democrats to win. But what if they like the extremist right-wing candidates better? But on the flip side, he warned, if the vote doesn't go their way, you could end up with conspiracy theorists, election deniers, and so on in very important places. Yes, put there by the Democratic Party. These candidates aren't Republican enough. We need more Republican candidates, says the Democratic Party. Okay. Although Acosta questioned whether the Democrats were playing with fire, Carville expressed no concern. The idea of a political campaign is to win the election. It acts in its own interests. Well, I don't think those two things necessarily flow. The idea is indeed to win. I don't know that necessarily therefore follows it acts in its own interests. The Raging Cajun has said, I've done the same thing. I would do the same thing. I don't see any ethical or moral problems with doing this. I think most of the opposition to this is from the pontifical class, mostly located on the coast. I don't see anything wrong with this. And you try to do everything you can to help your candidate or your party win the election. And that's pretty simple. It's what the DCCC is trying to do by funding really, really extreme right-wing candidates. The idea that they will be such laughable figures compared to the moderate Democrat figures that people will rush to vote for the Democrats. I'm not 100% sure that that logic necessarily works. Several mainstream outlets, including MSNBC and USA Today, have called out the Democrats for calling this and called it a dangerous political game. It sure is, because you're funding your direct opposition. It's like I'm funding the most virulent disease possible, so I have something to cure. A Washington Post column in June blasted the Democrats' dark money groups for hypocritically calling Trumpism a threat to democracy while very much supporting it. There is something there, to be sure. Sometimes it backfires. Sometimes it doesn't work. You don't say. Well, okay, people do stupid things from time to time, but I wholeheartedly endorse this idea of being involved in the primaries to help them nominate the stupidest, goofiest, extreme person they can, said Carville. Okay, be careful what you wish for, I guess. During the segment, Acosta aired a clip of Nancy Pelosi similarly defending the strategy of supporting Republicans in primaries for Democratic advantage. I say we need a strong Republican Party, not a cult of personality. That didn't mean we shouldn't have a strong Democratic Party as well. And the political decisions that are made out there are made in furtherance of our winning the election because we think the contrast between Democratic and Republicans, as they are now, is so drastic, we have to win. Surely, we have to win. It's not like they could vote against us anyway. Okay, Nancy, I guess we'll see how that pans out, I guess. Thus, that brings us to the end of this article about James Carville thinking the Democrats funding extreme Republicans is a really super great idea. Well, I'm not so sure about that one, James. I mean, you are the Raging Cajun the political consultant expert extraordinaire. But I have my doubts, man. I have my doubts. I think you might wind up with a lot of these people just winning, and then you'll have no one to blame but yourself. So I guess we'll see how that all pans out. It's a dangerous game, Cotton. Let's see if this one pays out. And that, for a moment, at least brings us to the end of the discussion of this article. Thank you so much for being part of the Uncivil Law family. If you enjoyed this legal education content, please hit the subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow. We appreciate your continuing support. Until later, my friends, cheers and goodbye.